Moin Overvaluing.
Hi, Amos.
Final part of this analysis that we're doing, are we doing an analysis this time? No, we're not.
This time we're going to actually just take a step back and maybe we'll refer to some of the case studies that we've mentioned with Jollibee and Starbucks and Snuva.
Yeah.
So the three of them all being in the food industry, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And just discuss arrogance versus humility, but in the sense of how do we create a culture of humility in a business. So if you're a business, if you're a small business owner, if you work in a large business, if you're in the management, even if you just manage a team within that company, our belief is that creating a culture of humility will ultimately lead to smarter decision-making processes. And the things that we've identified are not overvaluing a company's brand, because overvaluing the brand is effectively a derivative of arrogance, or a consequence of arrogance.
Yeah. It's a better way to put it.
Undervaluing a brand, meaning valuing the brand just as it is, or even underselling it a little bit to create a sense of humility, meaning your brand, you can't only go on the power of your brand into a new venture, a new market, a new product line. Your company has to be able to see what value they're going to actually provide, and if there's ample research involved in making the right decisions based on what's in front of you. Not every market is equal, not every product is the same, not everything will be received the same.
I think the big takeaway from that is that not overvaluing the brand means that you have to do the work in order to penetrate the market. Correct,
and that's one of the things that we identified about. I remember we had a little difference of opinions about what was the motivation behind Starbucks going to Australia and failing.
Yeah.
And we both had, which was interesting to hear both of our approaches. My approach was that, just as you said, companies will be effectively lazy, but not lazy in the sense of that they don't want to put in the work, but they don't want to invest in the work because they don't think they need to.
Yeah.
Because they thought the power of their brand would be enough instead of dedicating a team and doing the work and doing the legwork and time and resources that it takes to actually develop a brand. Snuva is also a very similar case where a company said, just because we're at Snuva, we'll basically go have a businessman go around all these Romanian distribution channels, establish our own dairy, make our own milk, buy a bunch of dairies and manage that. And not only manage, but then we're at Snuva, so we know how to make great milk products. They'll just buy us to lap it up, and they've ultimately failed.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do the proper work. If they understood the Romanian market better, then they may not have made the same mistakes. And maybe Snuva would have been in Romania today, and maybe they would have had a 5 or 10% market share. Because they do make good quality products.
Yeah.
Made a lot of mistakes, though.
An interesting thing that I noticed with the three cases is that McDonald's and Jollibee provide cooked food.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity for McDonald's to find an in to the market, even though it might be a smaller in, with the tourist market. With Starbucks in Australia, Starbucks give prepared coffee to the customers as well. Snuva, on the other hand, is not necessarily a ready product that, like, it might be a product that you would use in other cooking. So it's more like,
I don't know, some of the things you use, like their cottage cheese,
some of it is
cream cheese,
you'd use raw, but it's not like, it's not a restaurant or a cafe
that's right.
or anything, which is an interesting point as well.
Yeah,
with the difference in the market is slightly different.
It's very different because
Snuva.
you're dealing with supermarkets, you're dealing with small dairies.
Yeah,
it's a distribution. It's a manufacturing and distribution. The other two don't deal with manufacturing.
Yeah,
they they get the foods and coffee and whatnot from other places, and they make ready-made food at fast food places.
So is that
That's true. It's
another
a different market.
I mean, like it's another reason that I think that maybe Tnuva, what they did was completely fail, and they had to pull out of the market entirely because they didn't have another out like the tourist market that Starbucks or McDonald's would have.
That's right. That's right. They're basically they're going for broke. Like
Yeah.
you're either going to go big or go home, and they ended up going home. Now the question is, in all of those cases, so we talked about humility and arrogance. We mentioned the Malbim that arrogance is having an illusory effect in a person's mind, thinking they're greater than themselves or greater than other people, to the point where it's not based on reality.
Yeah.
That's one of the effects of arrogance. And humility is not that I'm all that counts, rather what's greater than me counts.
Yes.
So how do you create that culture? And one of the first things, creating a culture of humility, is to take the I out of the equation. Very famous saying by a football player, there's no I in team.
Yeah.
I believe it's Walter Payton.
Yes. I've heard this.
Walter
this
Payton,
name
I
before.
believe. Running back for the Chicago Bears.
I like the Jonathan Sachs one.
So Jonathan Sachs.
The Ellington and Wellington.
Yes, he was here. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, of blessed memory, and he talked about how the culture went from we to I, and how the culture has to go back from I to we.
Yeah.
He wrote a whole book called Morality, which was published, by the way, 2 months before he died, September 2020. I have the book at home. We have it in the library here in the shul as well. And when he was here, it's like from Illington to Wellington. It was so brilliant.
Yeah. I use that.
And at that point, I knew that he wrote the speech, wrote the drasha for us. It wasn't just a generic one.
I used that in my best friend's wedding as well. I had to speak,
nice.
and so I said, "You're a couple, so you need to think as we and not I."
That's right.
Yeah.
From I to we, or me to we, is a whole movement as well in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Me to we. You flip the M and it becomes a W. So it's that's the culture. Meaning, if we take the I out of it, then we focus on the we. Now that's one aspect of collective responsibility versus personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Another aspect of it, though, is what Simon Sinek says in his book, very famous one, Start with Why. Now, I'm not going to go through Simon Sinek. We'll have to analyze him and his ideas another time. But the concept is like this. The goal of a company is not to make money. He keeps repeating this mantra.
Yeah.
Money is, he calls it freedom, because of freedom to invest, freedom to give charity, freedom to expand, freedom to pay your workers more, or lack of freedom if you don't have it.
Yeah.
Money is the necessary fuel to keep a company going, but that's not the goal of a company.
Yeah.
Also, goal of a company is not its brand. Brand is not a goal. Brand, again, is a very important mechanism in which a company could be successful. The goal of a company is to create value to the world.
Yeah.
Every company brings value. They should make a lot of money doing it, but essentially it's bringing value. So if you go back to the Starbucks case, there was no value in pumping caffeinated drinks in the local Australian market because they don't like that, and it's counterproductive. So it's not just not bringing value; it's giving them negative value, which is what harmed them. But for tourists, it gives them an unbelievable value because it gives them a sense of familiarity.
Yeah.
It gives them a place in a foreign country that's very far away from all those other countries of origin. You're going to Australia, you're going very far away. You take the time, you spend tens of thousands of dollars, and you go on all these exotic, shark exploring, outback exploring expeditions, or seeing Sydney or the Opera House or whatnot. And you just want a sense of home. So you're from New York or Toronto or even China, you go and you find that Starbucks, you're like, oh. I remember being at the Vienna airport, and I came from south of Spain, Gibraltar, through Vienna back to Israel, being a Canadian myself originally, and at the Vienna airport, and I had a hard trip, and there was a Starbucks there, and I bought it was like €6. It was a ridiculous amount of money. Like, I would never... The coffee's not worth that much, but I
No,
spent the
it's not.
€6, and I was so happy because I sat down on the bench there in the airport drinking my Starbucks, and I just felt better. It was a value that it was provided.
Yeah.
They ripped me off, but I was happy to be ripped off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's so and when Starbucks pivoted to where they could give value to tourists, they realized that they put in the work and they realized what value. So that's a matter of humility. You start with why. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to provide X value to the world.
Yeah.
And it could be in local markets, it could be in Starbucks in the States. The value they provide the world is you have a sense of status. Starbucks effectively today is status. So you're going to buy unbelievably expensive coffee because you are important. That's basically what Starbucks is, very generically, without...
Yeah.
There's obviously nuance to it.
We can go to another coffee company that's also that.
Yeah.
Which is Nespresso.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nespresso actually pivoted to that as their strategy.
Yeah.
And that's when they started making more money.
Mm.
When they stopped going to businesses and they went to the individual and they pumped up their brand, not overvaluing it, just pivoting with it and saying, "This you are," and George Clooney is my my spokesperson and the icon, the image. That's they made him because everyone wants to be George Clooney at that time, and that's when they became one of the more lucrative companies in the world.
Yeah.
From almost going bankrupt. Same product.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
There's something similar to that where it's like finding your value. It's an exercise called, it's a Japanese thing.
Yeah.
Ikigai. It's
Okay.
called. And it's like it's like a Venn diagram, and you imagine 4 circles that cross over into the middle, and you fill out, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what am I good at, what am I not good at, and the middle is what your purpose is. So it's similar in the business sense, where the business also needs to go through that self-analysis to find out where their value, what value they can bring to the world.
Right. And then what they do, they step outside of themselves. They're like, yes, we have a brand. Yes, it's important for us to continue to investing in our brand.
Yeah.
And brand management, brand awareness, and to grow it. But when you make a business decision, you have to take your brand completely out of it and see what value are we bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And then you take it away from I
and bring it to we.
We, the collective. What value are you bringing? Start. What's your why, as Simon Sinek says, and really it stems from humility, because the company has to say, you walk into fancy offices and you wear fancy suits or casual or whatever you're dressing, and you know that you are great and your brand is big and your ego's inflated, and the car you can afford is more expensive car because you're working for a lucrative company and you have benefits and all that. And when you make these business decisions, all of that doesn't matter. It does not matter. It's hard, especially for bigger companies. Even smaller companies that grew, and we'll talk about those in future times. Companies like Papa John's and companies like Chick-fil-A and those companies. Very interesting the way they grew and the values they have.
Yeah.
And how they were able to grow even more than larger chains.
Yeah.
Because of the culture that they had. But it's about value. That's one. Second is do the right thing. And doing the right thing is often difficult, as Rabbi Noah Weinberg says, because we don't always perceive it as providing a great source of pleasure. So if you talk about a person's individual life, sometimes you have to get up earlier than you want. You have to sacrifice your personal time for the better of the family, or for the better of your relationship.
Yeah.
Or for the better of, even think of business success. Sometimes you have to stay hours, because you got to get the job done because you have a deadline. Sometimes you have to say no to your job in order to invest more in your family so you don't leave them behind.
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm not getting into that
it's a
specific
balance.
equation.
It's a balance, yeah.
But the point is, whatever the right thing is, which could change. I give 2 conflicting examples. But
Yeah.
there could be two different right
But
things.
right? There'll be times where that is the right thing, and be other times
That's
where
correct.
the other
That's
one
why I
is.
give the conflicting examples. So
Yeah.
you have to know what the right thing is and sacrifice the other thing, even though it's not pleasurable.
Yeah.
And so when it comes back to these companies, if what Jollibee did is Jollibee understood who their market is and what the right thing is for their market. What Starbucks didn't do is they didn't do their due diligence to know that what they're providing is the right thing, or they're going to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And they didn't spend the time or resources doing it. Neither did Tanuva. They just thought that it was going to work, even if they had some analysis. They didn't really have the data. They didn't know it was the right thing. As Rav Noach Weinberg says, transcending the pettiness, which is, people who are arrogant are so involved in themselves.
Yeah.
Because arrogant people you can be self-confident and be humble, as we said.
Yeah.
And you could be arrogant and be a doormat.
Yeah.
But still value yourself more than anything else. Because you're only thinking about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And humility, as his humility, is freedom. When you are only concerned about truth and living by it, then you are free to express yourself in the most genuine and uninhibited way. The truth is, if you think about companies that you're attracted to, or if you think about people you want to go out and have a beer with, or people you want to seek advice from, you don't want to seek advice from people who are overly arrogant. It's usually a turnoff.
Yeah.
You can appreciate a person's success and say you need ego to get ahead. That's true to a point. But the question is the ego becoming the basis of your decision making? Or is the ego just there in order to have enough self-confidence in order to drive my value forward in the world?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point to finish on as well. So, I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of the mini-series that we're doing. Well, not mini-series, but the series that we're doing. And thank you for listening to Everything Under the Sun.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll be able to take these messages in your own life, your family life, your business life more specifically, and think about your circle of influence in your own business world, whether you're self-employed, whether you're an employee, whether you're an investor, and how to instill the concepts of humility that we've talked about in your own company, and let us know if you've done that, what success you've seen. It's not going to happen overnight. These things take a long time to create a foundation for proper decision making. But I do believe that this is the Torah way. This is the way. This is the Jewish ancient wisdom, and this is something that Judaism, a gift, has to give to the world, and hopefully that people will see much success while making their decisions on a foundation of humility and not arrogance.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Till next time.